First Contact. Squadron Master Surveyor Attila Venes stood at the command deck of the SNS Ardent in struggle, his weathered hands clasped behind his back as he stared into the inky void of the null zone. The fate of the Servian Republic rested on his shoulders, a burden that grew heavier with each passing moment. His mission was clear: penetrate the mysterious barrier surrounding the Sol system and recruit the legendary humans to aid in their desperate war against the combined forces of the Aura of Slavers and the imperialistic Cesis. The journey to this point had been fraught with sacrifice. The loss of the avenging sun still haunted him, its gutted hull a grim reminder of the power that lay dormant in this ancient quarantine system. But there was no turning back now. The latest reports from home painted a dire picture. Servia itself was under siege, its once mighty fleet reduced to a defensive circle around their homeworld. Squadron Master, his liaison officer, Lieutenant Kara then, approached with a data tablet. "We've compiled the initial analysis of the human responses to our contact message." Surveyor took the tablet, his eyes scanning the information with growing interest. The humans weren't just willing to talk, they were eager. Nearly 200 separate political entities had responded, each claiming some measure of authority and influence. It was a far cry from the unified weapon race they had expected to find. "Fascinating," he murmured, focusing on the response from the entity called the United States of America. "They speak of diplomacy and friendship, yet their message carries an unmistakable undertone of strength. Notice how they emphasize their position as the most powerful of Earth's nations." Lieutenant then nodded. "Yes, sir. Our cultural analysts suggest it's a subtle form of posturing. They're communicating their importance without making overt threats." "Clever," Surveyor said, continuing to scroll through the responses. "What do we know about their current technological level?" "That's where things get interesting, sir." Then brought up a series of sensor readings on the main view screen. "Their planet shows signs of industrialization and basic space capability, but nothing that should worry our defensive systems. However." She paused, tapping a few commands to zoom in on a particular reading. "However?" Surveyor prompted. "The energy signatures we're detecting don't match their apparent technological level. There are power fluctuations that suggest they possess technology far more advanced than what they're openly displaying. It's as if..." She struggled to find the right words. "As if they're hiding their true capabilities," Surveyor finished for her. "Just like the legend suggested. The ancient records they discovered spoke of humans as weapons created by a long-dead race, engineered to fight in wars that could shatter solar systems. But looking at the peaceful-seeming planet below, with its patchwork of nations and seemingly primitive technology, it was hard to reconcile that image with reality." "Sir," called out his sensor officer, "we're detecting movement from the planet's surface. Multiple launches, headed for low orbit." Surveyor straightened. "Defensive posture?" "Negative, sir. They appear to be diplomatic vessels. We're receiving transmission requests from several of them simultaneously." A smile tugged at the corner of Surveyor's mouth. These humans were certainly eager to make contact. Perhaps too eager. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to their rapid response than simple curiosity or friendliness. "Lieutenant then, prepare our diplomatic reception area. Have the fleet maintain current position, but keep our shields at full power. Let's not take any unnecessary risks." He paused, considering his next words carefully. "And have our xenolinguists standing by. I want to understand every nuance of what these humans say to us." As his crew rushed to comply with his orders, Surveyor returned his attention to the approaching human vessels. They were small, certainly nothing that could threaten his fleet, but there was something about their design that caught his eye. The way they moved suggested propulsion technology that shouldn't have been possible at their apparent level of development. Squadron Master then called out, "I've been analyzing the pattern of their responses. There's something you should see." She brought up a holographic display showing the timeline of messages they'd received. Notice how the responses came in waves, each slightly more sophisticated than the last. It's as if they were testing our translation capabilities, adjusting their language patterns based on our responses. Sevier's eyes narrowed. They were probing our systems. Clever indeed. He watched as the first of the human vessels approached their designated meeting point. Very well, let's see what these humans have to say for themselves. Signal our readiness to receive their representatives. As the diplomatic preparations continued, Sevier couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to discover exactly why the humans had been sealed away behind the null zone. Whether that discovery would save the Servian Republic or doom it remained to be seen. The first human delegation was scheduled to dock within the hour. Sevier ordered his most trusted officers to the diplomatic reception area, each carefully briefed on security protocols. If the humans truly were the weapons of legend, any wrong move could prove catastrophic. Yet as he watched the approaching vessels, Sevier felt a growing sense of anticipation. These humans had managed to maintain their civilization despite being imprisoned for millennia. They had developed their own culture, their own nations, their own ways of life. Perhaps they were more than just weapons. Perhaps they were exactly what the Servian Republic needed, not just for their war, but for their future. Continued in Part 2. Hidden Depths. The diplomatic reception chamber aboard the SNS Ardent in struggle hummed with tension as Squadron Master Sevier watched the human delegation step through the airlock. He had expected warriors, given their legendary status, but the 5 individuals who entered defied all expectations. They wore what appeared to be ceremonial attire, suits and uniforms that spoke more of bureaucracy than battlefield glory. Leading them was a woman who introduced herself as Ambassador Sarah Chen of the United Nations Security Council. Her presence was commanding, despite her small stature compared to the Servians. Behind her stood representatives from various Earth nations, the United States, Russia, China, and India. Welcome aboard the Ardent in struggle, Sevier said, using their translated language protocols. We appreciate your swift response to our communication. Ambassador Chen smiled, a gesture that Sevier's cultural briefing had indicated meant friendliness, though he noticed it didn't quite reach her eyes. The pleasure is ours, Squadron Master. It's not every day we receive visitors who've broken through the null zone. The casual mention of the barrier made Sevier's antennae twitch. You know of its purpose then? Of course, Chen replied, taking her seat at the conference table. We've had millennia to study it, though we've never had reason to breach it ourselves. Until now, it served its purpose well. Lieutenant then, standing at Sevier's side, shifted uncomfortably. The humans spoke of their imprisonment as if it were a choice, a shield rather than a cage. The implications were unsettling. Ambassador, Sevier began, our records indicate that your species was created for a specific purpose. Yet you've built your own civilization, your own nations. How much do you remember of your origins? The human delegates exchanged glances that Sevier couldn't quite interpret. Ambassador Chen's smile widened slightly. Squadron Master, perhaps we should discuss your current situation first. You mentioned a war in your transmission. The deflection was obvious, but Sevier had little choice but to proceed. He activated a holographic display showing the current state of the conflict with the Alrev and CSIS forces. As he explained the dire situation facing the Servian Republic, he noticed the military representatives in the human delegation making subtle gestures to each other. A fascinating tactical problem, said General Jackson, the American representative. Your enemies have you surrounded, outnumbered, and outgunned. Yet you've managed to maintain a defensive perimeter around your homeworld. At great cost, Sevier admitted. But we cannot hold out much longer without aid. Ambassador Chen leaned forward. And what exactly are you asking of Earth, Squadron Master? Our scientists believe that your species possesses capabilities far beyond what we currently observe. The records speak of weapons that could. Chen interrupted, raising a hand. I think I see the misunderstanding. You believe we are weapons, created to be used by others? Severe's antennae flattened in confusion. Are you not? The ancient records clearly state, a deep chuckle came from the Russian representative, General Petrov. The ancient records are correct, Squadron Master, but incomplete. We were indeed created as weapons, but that was a very long time ago. We've evolved since then. Evolved? Lieutenant then asked. Perhaps a demonstration would be helpful, Ambassador Chen suggested. She touched a small device on her wrist, and suddenly the entire diplomatic chamber was flooded with energy readings that sent Severe sensors into chaos. Impossible, then whispered. The human ceremonial attire had transformed, revealing advanced technological interfaces that put even Servian technology to shame. What you see, Chen explained, is just a fraction of what we've developed during our imprisonment. The null zone wasn't created to keep us in, Squadron Master. It was created to keep others out while we developed our potential. The revelation hit Severe like a plasma burst. The humans hadn't been contained, they'd been protected. Their apparent primitive state wasn't a result of imprisonment but a choice, a carefully maintained facade. Then why? He began. Why maintain the illusion? Chen finished for him. Safety, primarily. The galaxy can be a dangerous place, as your current situation demonstrates. We found it prudent to remain inconspicuous while we advanced our civilization. General Jackson stepped forward, his uniform now displaying holographic interfaces that made Servian technology look primitive by comparison. Your enemies aren't the first to attempt galactic domination, Squadron Master. We've observed many such conflicts over the millennia. Usually, we prefer not to intervene. Usually. Severe caught the qualification immediately. Ambassador Chen's expression turned serious. We've reviewed your Republic's governance records, your society's principles. You fight not for conquest but for freedom. This interests us. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. These humans weren't just potential allies, they were a sleeping giant that had been watching, waiting, and advancing far beyond anything the galaxy's current powers could imagine. However, Chen continued, if we agree to help, it won't be as weapons to be wielded. Earth will act as an independent power, with its own interests and conditions. Severe felt a mix of relief and trepidation. The help they desperately needed was within reach, but the price and implications were yet unknown. What conditions? First, Chen said, we'll need to discuss the future of galactic governance. The current system of competing empires and republics is unstable. We have some suggestions for improvement. As the human delegates began outlining their vision for galactic peace, Severe realized that this mission had evolved far beyond its original scope. He hadn't just found weapons to turn the tide of war, he'd awakened a civilization that would reshape the very fabric of galactic society. The question now was whether the galaxy was ready for humanity's emergence from behind the null zone. As he listened to the humans outline technological and political concepts that bordered on the miraculous, Severe suspected the answer was no. But ready or not, change was coming. Continued in Part 3. Awakening Giants. The war room aboard the SNS Ardent in struggle had transformed beyond recognition in the 3 days since the human delegation's arrival. Holographic displays that Lieutenant then had once considered state-of-the-art now seemed quaint beside the quantum imaging systems the humans had installed. Squadron Master Severe stood at the central platform, watching as Earth's military representatives outlined their intervention plan. The Alrafcesis fleet will reach Servia's outer defense line within 72 hours, General Jackson explained, manipulating the tactical display with practiced ease. Their numbers are substantial. Substantial was an understatement. The hologram showed over 3,000 enemy warships converging on Servia, nearly triple the size of the defending fleet. Severe had seen the numbers before, but they hadn't become any less daunting with repetition. And your solution? He asked, trying to keep the skepticism from his voice. The humans had promised aid, but their visible forces seemed minimal. Just 20 ships had emerged from Earth's atmosphere to join his fleet. Ambassador Chen stepped forward, her ceremonial attire now permanently replaced by what the humans called a tactical interface suit. We'll demonstrate our capabilities on a smaller scale first. The enemy has deployed forward scout groups to map jump points around Servia, yes? Sevier nodded. 3 squadrons, each with at least 30 ships. We've been unable to prevent their reconnaissance due to our limited numbers. Perfect, General Petrov said, a predatory smile crossing his face. A suitable test case. He turned to the Chinese representative, Admiral Zhang, who had been quietly working at a separate console. Your team is ready. Of course. Admiral Zhang straightened, touching his wrist interface. Strike Group Epsilon reports full combat readiness. Permission to proceed with Operation First Light. Ambassador Chen gave a slight nod. Granted. Squadron Master, please observe the tactical displays Sector 7. Sevier watched as 5 human vessels, barely larger than corvettes, accelerated toward the nearest enemy scout squadron. The ships moved with impossible speed, their energy signatures barely registering on his instruments despite their obvious power. This can't be right, Lieutenant then muttered, checking her readings. Sir, according to our sensors, those ships they're not there. But we can see them. Quantum ghosting, General Jackson explained. The ships exist in a state of probability rather than conventional spacetime. Makes them rather hard to hit. Before Sevier could process the implications of that statement, the human vessels engaged the enemy squadron. What followed could barely be called a battle. The Alrev ships, among the most advanced in known space, didn't even manage to raise their shields before 3 of them vanished in brilliant flashes of light. The others attempted to scatter, but the human vessels moved through space in ways that defied physics, appearing to be in multiple locations simultaneously. How? Sevier began, but words failed him as he watched the entire enemy squadron reduced to debris in less than 2 minutes. Not a single human ship had been touched. Phase-shifted plasma lances, Admiral Zhang said casually, as if describing something as mundane as a maintenance routine. Combined with probability drives and quantum targeting arrays. Rather basic equipment by our standards, but we thought it best to start small. Small? Lieutenant Then's voice cracked. You just destroyed 30 advanced warships with 5 corvettes. Ambassador Chen's expression remained neutral, but there was a glint in her eye that Sevier was learning to recognize, pride mixed with careful restraint. As we said, Squadron Master, we've had time to develop during our isolation. This demonstration serves 2 purposes, to show you a fraction of our capabilities, and to send a message to your enemies. A message? Sevier asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Indeed, General Petrov confirmed. Right now, the Alrev and CSIS leadership are receiving reports of their scout squadron's destruction. They're analyzing sensor data that will tell them 2 things, 1, that a completely unknown force has entered the conflict, and 2, that this force possesses technology far beyond their comprehension. And now, General Jackson added, we wait approximately 6 hours. Why 6 hours? Lieutenant then asked. That's how long it will take their analysts to confirm that the sensor data is genuine, for their leadership to have an emergency session, and for them to send the message we expect. Ambassador Chen's smile widened slightly. They'll want to talk. As if on cue, the communications array lit up with incoming transmissions. The Alrev Supreme Command was requesting immediate diplomatic contact. The CSIS Empire's Chancellor demanded explanations. Dozens of neutral systems suddenly expressed interest in peaceful resolution to the conflict. Right on schedule, Admiral Zhang noted, checking his chronometer. Humans aren't the only species who behave predictably when confronted with superior force. Sevier watched as more data poured in from across the sector. The galaxy was waking up to a new reality, and the ripples were only beginning to spread. What happens now? Ambassador Chen's expression turned serious. Now, Squadron Master, we begin the real work. Your Republic's survival is assured, no one will dare attack once we formally announce our alliance. But as we discussed earlier, the galaxy needs restructuring. The age of unchecked empires and chronic warfare must end. And if they resist this, restructuring? Sevier asked, though he already knew the answer. They won't, General Jackson said simply. What you saw today was achieved with technology we considered obsolete a century ago. We have no desire to rule through force, but we will ensure peace. One way or another. The implications hung heavy in the war room. Humanity hadn't just emerged from isolation, they had revealed themselves as a power that could reshape the galaxy with barely an effort. The weapons of legend had become something far more terrifying, a civilization so advanced that they viewed the galaxy's greatest empires as children playing with toys. As Sevier watched the diplomatic requests continue to flood in, he realized that his mission had succeeded beyond anything he could have imagined. The Servian Republic would survive, yes, but it would survive into a galaxy fundamentally transformed by humanity's emergence. Ambassador, he said finally, I believe we should prepare a joint statement for the galaxy at large. They'll want to know what comes next. Chen nodded. Agreed. But first, let's recall Strike Group Epsilon. They've identified 2 more enemy scout squadrons, and we might as well be thorough in our demonstration. The galaxy's balance of power had shifted irrevocably. As Sevier watched the human ships move with impossible grace through space, he wondered if anyone truly understood what that meant, himself included. Continued in Part 4. The Great Awakening. The Grand Conference Chamber on Centauri Prime buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from every major galactic power gathered for what many were already calling the most significant diplomatic summit in known history. Squadron Master Sevier, seated beside Ambassador Chen, watched as species that had been mortal enemies just days ago now sat together, united in their anxiety about humanity's emergence. The Alrev Supreme Commander, a towering figure with iridescent scales, kept shooting wary glances at the human delegation. The CSIS Chancellor, normally proud and aloof, seemed to have shrunk in his ornate throne. News of Strike Group Epsilon's demonstration had spread rapidly, and the follow-up displays of human technology had only heightened the galaxy's collective unease. The Council recognizes Ambassador Sarah Chen of Earth, announced the neutral mediator, a member of the ancient Arxer species. You may present your proposal for galactic reorganization. Chen stood, her tactical interface suit shimming slightly as she moved to the central platform. With a casual gesture, she activated a holographic display that made the chamber's advanced systems look primitive by comparison. Distinguished representatives, she began, her voice carrying effortlessly through the vast space, what you are about to see is not merely a proposal, it is a roadmap to a future that will benefit all species. Earth has spent millennia observing, learning, and preparing for this moment. The hologram expanded, showing a complex network of interconnected systems and institutions. We call this the Galactic Concordat. It is a framework for sustainable peace, technological advancement, and cultural preservation that will transform our galaxy from a collection of competing powers into a true civilization. As Chen outlined the details, Sevier watched the other representatives' reactions closely. The initial fear and suspicion were gradually being replaced by something else, wonder, and in some cases, hope. Access to Earth's technological database will be granted in stages, Chen continued, contingent upon each society's demonstrated commitment to peaceful development. Yes, this includes our quantum drive technology, our medical advances, and our energy production systems. The Alrev Supreme Commander's scales rippled with barely contained excitement. And what guarantees do we have that Earth won't simply dominate us with these advantages? A fair question, Chen acknowledged. Which is why Earth will be voluntarily restricting its military presence to a peacekeeping force, overseen by a council representing all member species. We have no interest in empire building, our goal is advancement, not dominance. The CSIS chancellor leaned forward. And if we refuse these terms? General Jackson, standing at the back of the human delegation, stepped forward. With a simple command to his wrist interface, he activated a small device on the conference table. Instantly, every weapon in the chamber, including those supposedly hidden or shielded, stopped functioning. That's a localized entropy field, Jackson explained calmly. One of our more basic security measures. We're not here to threaten anyone, Chancellor, but make no mistake, the old way of doing things, the constant warfare and power struggles, ends today. You can either be part of building something better, or you can become irrelevant. The choice is yours. The chamber erupted in murmurs as the device was deactivated. Sevier noticed that even the most militant representatives seemed subdued. It wasn't just the display of technological superiority, it was the casual way the humans wielded it, as if they were adults supervising squabbling children. Perhaps, Chen resumed, we should discuss the immediate benefits of membership in the Concordat. Admiral Zhang, would you show them the medical technology package that's included in Phase 1? The holographic display shifted to show cellular regeneration techniques, disease-curing methodologies, and life extension technologies that made the galaxy's best medical science look medieval by comparison. The Arxer mediator, whose species was suffering from a genetic degradation crisis, leaned forward with undisguised interest. All of this, Chen emphasized, is just the beginning. Earth has solutions to virtually every scientific and social challenge facing your societies. We've had millennia to perfect them, after all. Lieutenant Then, who had been taking notes beside Sevier, whispered, Sir, they're not just reshaping the political landscape, they're about to trigger the largest technological and social revolution in galactic history. Sevier nodded. The humans weren't simply emerging as a superpower, they were positioning themselves as mentors to the entire galaxy. The technological gifts they were offering would transform every society they touched, creating ties of gratitude and dependency that would make traditional military dominance unnecessary. There will, of course, be a transition period, Chen continued. Earth understands that such massive changes require time and adaptation. We've prepared comprehensive assistance packages for each society, tailored to their specific needs and cultural contexts. The Alrev Supreme Commander raised a clawed hand. And what of existing conflicts? The resources and territories currently under dispute? An excellent question, Chen smiled. Earth has developed a comprehensive resource replication technology that renders most territorial disputes obsolete. As for existing conflicts. She paused, making eye contact with each major representative. They end now. Earth's peacekeeping fleet will ensure compliance while the Concordat's arbitration systems are established. The message was clear, the age of warfare was over, whether the galaxy's powers liked it or not. Earth had the technology to enforce peace and the diplomatic skill to make it palatable. As the session continued, Sevier realized that he was witnessing not just the end of his people's war, but the end of an era. The humans hadn't just emerged from their isolation, they had emerged with a fully formed vision for galactic civilization and the power to implement it. The galaxy would never be the same. Continued in Part 5. A New Dawn. 1 year after the Centauri Prime Summit, Squadron Master Sevier stood on the observation deck of Earth's newly constructed Galactic Concordat headquarters, a structure that seemed to defy the laws of physics as it floated serenely above the planet's atmosphere. The massive station was a perfect symbol of humanity's approach to galactic leadership, impressive yet inviting, powerful yet accessible. Still getting used to the quantum architecture? Lieutenant Then asked, joining him at the viewport. Like many Servians, she'd been among the first to volunteer for the technology exchange program Earth had established. I doubt I'll ever get entirely used to it, Sevier admitted, watching as parts of the station shifted and reconfigured themselves in response to the needs of its occupants. Sometimes I wonder if we were ready for all of this. That's exactly why Earth chose to reveal themselves now, Ambassador Chen said, approaching from behind them. Her tactical interface suit had been replaced by more formal diplomatic attire, though Sevier knew the advanced technology was still woven into every fiber. The galaxy had reached a critical point. Change was inevitable, we simply ensured it happened in a constructive way. The past year had transformed the galaxy more dramatically than the previous millennium. The humans' Phase 1 technological packages had cured diseases that had plagued species for generations, solved energy crises that had sparked countless wars, and introduced transportation systems that made the old hyperdrive networks obsolete. The latest reports from the transition councils are encouraging, Chen continued, bringing up a holographic display with a gesture. Over 90% of known civilizations have fully committed to the Concordat. Even the Alrev, traditionally the most militant, are redirecting their shipyards to produce exploration vessels instead of warships. And the holdouts? Sevier asked, though he already knew the answer. Coming around, General Jackson said, joining their group. Amazing how persuasive unlimited clean energy and medical immortality can be. The last hardliners are finding it difficult to maintain popular support when their neighbors are experiencing unprecedented prosperity. Sevier nodded. He'd seen it himself, worlds that had been bitter enemies for centuries were now collaborating on massive engineering projects, sharing resources that Earth's replication technology had made abundantly available. The humans had made war not just illegal but obsolete. There is one thing I still don't understand, then said, turning to Chen. Why did Earth wait so long? You could have emerged at any time, transformed the galaxy ages ago. Timing, Chen replied, her expression thoughtful. Humanity needed to be certain we'd evolved beyond our own warlike nature before we took on the responsibility of guiding other species. The null zone gave us the time and space we needed to mature as a civilization. And now? Sevier asked. Now we're ready to be the mentors we were engineered to be, Chen said. Our creators designed us as weapons, yes, but they gave us something else too, the capacity to grow, to learn, to transcend our original purpose. We spent millennia developing not just technology, but wisdom. The observation deck fell silent as they watched a fleet of ships emerge from Earth's atmosphere, sleek vessels of impossible design, carrying diplomatic missions to the furthest reaches of known space. Each ship carried not just advanced technology but teachers, scientists, and cultural advisors, all dedicated to helping other species advance along their own paths. The real work is just beginning, General Jackson noted. Technology is the easy part. Helping civilizations adapt to these changes, guiding them toward peaceful development while preserving their unique cultures, that's the challenge. A challenge Earth seems well prepared for, Sevier observed. The humans had demonstrated an almost prescient understanding of how different species would react to their emergence, crafting approaches tailored to each civilization's psychological and cultural makeup. We had time to prepare, Chen smiled. Lots of it. The harder part was waiting, watching conflicts we could have ended, suffering we could have prevented. But premature intervention would have done more harm than good. The galaxy needed to be ready. Sevier thought back to his desperate mission just 1 year ago, how close his civilization had come to destruction. I still find it remarkable that our search for weapons led us to find teachers instead. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson in all of this, Chen mused. True power isn't about destruction or dominance, it's about the wisdom to know when and how to use your capabilities for the greater good. The station's quantum architecture shifted again, creating a new chamber for an incoming delegation from a recently discovered civilization. Sevier watched in amazement as the laws of physics bent to accommodate the visitor's unique biological needs. You know, then said, when I was first assigned to this mission, I thought we were either going to save the Republic or die trying. I never imagined we'd end up helping to transform the entire galaxy. That's the thing about transformation, Chen replied. Once it begins, it tends to cascade in unexpected ways. Humanity's emergence was just the catalyst. What happens next depends on all of us, working together. As if to emphasize her point, a message flashed across the holographic display, another breakthrough from one of the joint research teams. A species that had been on the verge of extinction had just been saved through a combination of human technology and their own medical traditions. That's what the Concordat is really about, Chen said, watching the celebration unfold in the research center. Not just humans uplifting other species, but all of us combining our knowledge, our perspectives, our unique gifts to create something greater than any one civilization could achieve alone. Seveir smiled, remembering his fear when he first arrived at the Sol system. How quickly terror of humanity's weapons had transformed into awe at their wisdom, their foresight, their genuine desire to help others achieve their potential. The galaxy had indeed found its true superpower, not in humanity's advanced technology or their ability to enforce peace, but in their capacity to unite, guide, and inspire. The weapons of legend had become teachers, the imprisoned had become liberators, and the galaxy's endless cycle of conflict had given way to an era of unprecedented cooperation and growth. As Seveir watched the endless stream of ships arriving at and departing from the Concordat headquarters, he realized that this wasn't just the end of his story, it was the beginning of the galaxy's greatest chapter. The end.